Welcome back to the Dan Time Podcast. I am your host, Dan McArdle. If you've been here all along, I say it every week, but sincerely, thank you. To plug this into your rotation and not miss an episode with everything that's out there that you could possibly be listening to, that means something to me. So thanks for being a listener. I hope this is fun. If it's your first time listening, I mostly talk to, I wouldn't say mostly, but commonly talk to people named Dan or something like it. That's the joke of the show, but it extends out. So the makeup of the guest is going to be songwriters named Dan, athletes named Dan, or Danielle, or what have you. And then some of the guests are directly from my network. Folks, today, my guest, I have been trying for, sounds like months, but this has also been kind of a back pocket guest. And I am so pleased today. This is somebody, a friend of mine, a longtime friend, regularly a part of text communications. I'm so happy that we've lined up our schedules today, as we say in the South. Lowell Shepura is here today. Construction professional. He's a UAB graduate with a master's in engineering and construction management. Also believe it or not, in a fantasy football league that has spanned 2 decades. He's a 7-time champion of this invitation-only fantasy football league. Lowell, thank you so much for being here today. You're also a brother, a son, and kind of a shadowy figure, which is good. He's a man of mystery. Who doesn't want to be a man of mystery in today's age? It's so easy to just plaster yourself all over the place, but sometimes it's okay to hang back and create some mystique. Lowell, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to be talking to you today.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, and wow, what an intro. You know, just for starters, I don't think you could find a more opposite name than Dan. And you know, what a perfect way to branch out. And you know, if I had my own podcast for Lowell time, it would be a very short list of people, I can assure you. So I'm happy to do this. Thank you for inviting me. And I do remain in the shadows. I'm one of the people who like to watch, listen, learn, you know, not in a creepy way. But you know, I talk when I'm comfortable. So here I am, 7-time champion. That's correct. I'm glad we got that right. I don't, you know, like to toot my horn. Maybe I'm the Belichick of the league. You know, I mean, maybe the Saban. But I'll just leave it at that. Jim is my arch nemesis in the league, the Jim Hammers, or Not a Living Tide, depending on the mood he's in. And just give a shout out to him.
Well, Lowell, first question. I had this kind of in the mix here, number 3 and number 4 of my notes, but I got to ask right out the gate. We've talked about this or messaged about it. The name Lowell you don't hear about it every day. Have you in your childhood or your adult life, by chance, just run into another Lowell, shaking hands with somebody, say, "Hey, I'm Lowell," and the other person said, "Me too"? Has that ever happened?
It has not. No. One of our friends from school, I knew his dad was named Lowell, but obviously I would see him at the distance, direct league basketball. He was a coach, and that was about the extent of it. And you know, looking back, it's the most famous person I'm associated with is Lowell Mather from Wings, and you know, it's a good show, so I don't mind that.
How about the?
But it's a very unique name. It was given to me, I want to say, it was a friend of my father's way back, and that's where it came from. It's one of a kind, especially when you pair it with my last name. It's I always tell the stories when you're at a bar and you're trying to close a tab out and it's late at night and it's loud and you know, what's your name? Lowell. You're trying to yell Lowell and you know they can't understand you and they're like, okay, well give me your last name, and I'm like, ooh, well that's probably that's not much better. That's not going to help you there either.
How often have people tried to, speaking of your surname, try to pronounce it Shapiro, like say Robert Shapiro?
Shapiro, Shapura, Shepherd. It's butchered. It's Shepura. It's butchered, and it's just to be expected at this point. The most awkward times are obviously if you're waiting on food or Starbucks, wherever they call your name out. I don't even bother listing my full name anymore. It's just something as simple as like a John. Maybe I'll start using Dan as an alias. That's actually a good idea.
Also, some prominent namesakes. Governor Lowell Weicker of Connecticut. I'm pulling this off of nameberry.com, where people go to find some interesting names for their new arrivals.
Well, there's always our own Lowell Barron, right, out of Fife County.
That's right.
He was the famous Alabama senator who got in a fisticuffs on the Senate floor with another gentleman. I cannot remember who it was against, but that was part of his claim to fame.
The name Lowell, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, but I always feel like I should, when I have Dan guests on and Danielle and so forth, when the episode is complete and it's out there, I always think, man, I should have asked more questions about the name. I always seem to just get into the meat of the episode without discussing this stuff, but I always love looking at these names, and Lowell peaked as a name for baby boys in the 1930s. Reached number 148, and all these names have graphs to kind of gauge where the name's headed, where it was, where it's going, and there is this sharp plummet around 1938, 1940, and literally just kind of falls off a cliff.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up to see what scandal there was associated to just wiped it off the map. What other names, let's just put into perspective, what other names are around it on this list?
Okay.
Where it ranks next to.
20 names similar to Lowell on, again, nameberry.com, selected by our users that were looking for other names like Lowell. Lloyd, Crane, Kennelly. I never heard Kennelly. Lionel, Halcyon. I don't draw the connection there. Barrett, Griffith. Oh, there's a Lowy, Loewy. Laurent.
Yeah.
Laurent's a good one.
Man, yeah. I would assume those are comparable to it, but based off of the same amount of people maybe being named that, which wouldn't surprise me because I don't really hear that many other names like that, except Lloyd might have been the most common off what you just listed.
You know, I got to say, Lowell, and my oldest son, we named him Warren, and that's not a name that anybody's really grabbing in 2024. And
I love it. I
didn't really have a whole lot of influence in any of the names of my children. It was what Natalie was in favor of, and the only thing I had a little bit of veto power, I'd say, if she would float a name and she knew I was absolutely against it, I'd strike it off and just try to at least keep it to something that I could live with. Just got to live with these children.
Yeah, the uniqueness is good, and I do appreciate that, especially with both your sons' names.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool to have a name like yours that not everybody wears that name, and it's not impossible to pronounce or spell, which people will surprise you. They've They have a hard time with my last name on the phone quite often.
Or, a local camera crew interviewing, say, your brother, they have trouble spelling it.
Yes. But anyway, and then there's Lowell, Massachusetts, of course. I think there's a sports team there.
I can tell you that was a very prominent industrial town in the 1800s. So, yeah, why it fell off, I don't know enough about, but it absolutely was a prominent town. And I would just imagine that's probably where most people around the 20s, 30s were named after that. Maybe even from people that lived in that area. And this is me just as an amateur anthropologist. I don't know what you even call it, studying names and history of it.
Well, this show, we have a lot of fun with the name Dan, but I enjoy your name. I like just the pairing, Lowell Shepura. It's just, you're never going to hear that again. Do you think there's another person with your same first and last name spelled exactly the same on the planet?
I have thought that before, and no, I absolutely think it is one of a kind, unique. And that's why I'm kind of vigilant in terms of staying anonymous because it's pretty easy to search for me.
This is, folks, I got to tell you again, just because someone is in the network here, and they might still be a tough get. Lowell is not easily had, certainly for something like this. But anyway, moving along, our friendship it dates back to your connection with my brother Travis, and then we kind of picked up and got to know each other at least. I mean, I remember you from 25 years ago in the house that I grew up in, and then we prior to the turn of the 21st century, and then by about 2000 and it seems like 8 or 9, you and I would split off sometimes if we were at the same party, or a couple times we'd go get an afternoon beer or something together, and then here we are for years and years. I don't know how long this text chain has been going on, but
it's absolutely incredible when you put when you say it like that and you put it in perspective and you look at the calendar and 2024, and it's like, my God, I've known these guys for 25, 30 years. Travis actually, and I'm forever grateful. Your brother Travis, he kind of took me under his wing at high school, our senior year. And this was I was somewhat new, kind of in and out, had some other issues going on, health related at least. And, that was your brother didn't have to do that. And how cliquey our high school was and how hard it is to meet people in this town, at least Birmingham specific. Mm-hmm. So, Travis, I think, invited me to sit at the lunch table with him, and that was it. And here we are 25, 30 years later, sitting on a podcast with Travis's brother.
I knew that you guys go back that far, but I didn't even know that story.
Yeah. In fact, there's a really funny photo of me and him in the senior yearbook. And it's almost quite cringy and embarrassing when you look at it. We could have almost been holding hands.
Wow. If I can unearth this photo from somebody, this is going on the Dan Time Instagram page.
Definitely don't use that for the screenshot of this episode.
So,
but I kind of going back to I vividly remember it's more recent, but it was a while. It was still probably a decade ago. I think we had just left the Birmingham Bowl, and we stopped by Dave's downtown in Southside to watch it was Joe Flacco in the playoffs, and I thought that was a great kind of example of what you're talking about, where we split off from the crowd or find ourselves together and just go and have a good time.
That's right. Yeah, that was a fun night. I think Warren was 2 months old. I remember, because this was the end of 2017, or maybe he was a month old. So, speaking of Flacco, I had this kind of
anytime I can interject Flacco.
I wish I could take a picture of my notes, because I actually have him. I put a star next to his name, Star Flacco, Comeback Player of the Year, and that's just my reminder to ask you to get your thoughts on Joe Flacco. I think it's just so easy. It's too easy to say he was signed off the couch. I think that's colloquially easy for people to say. I mean, otherwise, you got to talk about. I mean, you don't just jump off your sofa and go play in the NFL. You're doing some level of training, which I think it really amounted to him just going out to a local facility or field and throwing the ball around with his brother. I mean, I think that was a lot of what was going on besides just conditioning.
No, yes, I absolutely agree. That's like the cliche saying off the couch, but then you see him on the field and he's not sitting there like some fat pot-belly retired guy. He clearly, he looks almost the same, maybe a few more gray hairs. But
I saw there was a guy in X that characterized Dan Straley signing with the Cubs and now pitching at Iowa as being signed off the couch. I'm like, okay, this guy clearly has not been keeping up with everything that Straley's been doing to get back into the game.
Yeah, to me, it's lazy. Of course, that's the state of the media we're in today. I don't know if you want to hear my opinion of the media. That might take this podcast into a dangerous.
I'm ready.
But no, but yes, sports journalism especially, it's driven by. Well, it's really not what we used to think of it as, and it's kind of a shame. But change is inevitable, and it's just part of it, I guess. And I'm largely speaking of ESPN, which was all a prominent, part of our childhoods growing up, and it's now just almost unwatchable to the point where it feels like sports is secondary to the content, which is a shame.
Yeah, remember back around 2000 and I don't know 1, 2, up until maybe 2005 or 6, when locally, you had what was on, like you said, Sports Center, but locally, you got people at the Diplomat Deli or Gus's Hot Dogs or something picking up Kevin Skarbinski and getting angry about something that Skarbinski wrote to get a rise out of a newspaper.
Yeah. His little blurbs, and then I would always, I love looking at the box scores in the paper, and even those games had little blurb write-ups, just a summary of the game, and I love those. And like now, it's just, if you have anything remotely like that in print, it's almost certainly going to be done by AI.
It's very disappointing.
Yeah. And speaking of, and I know this is your old stomping ground, at least for a little bit. I don't know if you saw the news recently. The Birmingham News building downtown has been acquired by, who's that lawyer?
Oh, the law firm of
Alexander Shannara.
Right. Mm-hmm. Of course.
Maybe I shouldn't have said his name, but I just like that. Is that real? That's kind of a microcosm of where we are in society in terms of print and media and information.
Yeah, it really saddens me more than anything. I mean, there's some writers at The Athletic that I think are doing a great job. I think some people still value good sports writing and sports coverage.
Yeah, I do too.
Seems like
and to me, and it's still I guess just the shocking, not shocking, but the put off about the good writing. It is behind a paywall, and you're just not used to doing it. Like, I'm not opposed to paying that money, but it's just kind of like, I just, I'm sitting on the sofa. I'm waiting for something, and I just wanted to read this quick article, and now it's asking me to log in to finish it. It's kind of like,
I think that's a good point. It seems like I consume my sports information in quick bursts when I only have about 3.5 minutes, and I really don't have those 3 minutes, but I'm trying to keep up. And so you run into that paywall, and you're thinking, I don't have an extra minute to sort through this and agree
exactly.
to the.
I don't have time.
Agree to the 7-day trial, and then now I got to remember to cancel it if I don't like it, and I got to go. Let me just go to ESPN.com and.
Yeah, let me go to ESPN.com and see what Stephen A. Smith has to say about
it. Well, Lowell, how about let's talk about some of the teams that you have been a fan of for many years. The Atlanta Braves, as we're talking today, 2 games back of the Phillies. Looks like the NL East kind of early here, but might end up being a 2-team race. Yeah,
it's being where we are, obviously so close to Atlanta, so it's always been a team I followed as a child. Honestly, my true kind of number one team. Like I start following Auburn the older I get. And you go to college here, and then you follow other teams, but Atlanta's always been kind of that true close to your heart team. And falling through the 90s was fun. You get 1 World Series out of 14 pennants or whatever. I still consider that a disappointing tenure. And I think that's, people probably look at Braves fans like me as delusional because of that mentality. But I think, we expect more. And I kind of feel that way about this current team. Last year especially, it was, you had this prolific offense, and they don't do anything with it. You get bumped out by the Phillies, and this is the second year in a row where it's happened. So fast forward to the off season, what do the Braves do to maybe counter the Phillies? Nothing. They had an arm, Chris Sale. Okay, great. He's doing great, but
I love
They
Chris
needed
Sale.
something a little. They needed a little more, in my opinion. And honestly, it's almost a wash now when you look at it because Strider's out. So Sale really just kind of slides into that role that Strider had. So really, you're kind of back to where you were last year. I felt one of the biggest moments of that playoffs. If you remember, it was what was it? Harper was running the bases after the home run, and he's just talking shit. I don't know if we can say that on this or not, but
Yeah.
He's fired up, he's yelling, he's talking shit, and every Braves fan is just kind of sitting there with their hands in their pockets, like kicking a rock in the dirt. And I'm just like, there is absolutely zero fire. These guys are all too nice. And, that's what they lack, versus the 90s where you had guys like Chipper Jones or Smoltz or Maddox where they would probably try to fight you. And that's what the Braves needed to add, and they didn't do it. And, I guess there's still it'll be interesting to see what they do in the trade deadline. It's, they got the World Series a couple years ago. That was phenomenal. That one of the most amazing runs I've ever seen, and I absolutely loved it. And I will always remember that Jorge Soler home run in the final game. It was just absolutely amazing. Gives me goosebumps thinking about it.
What are your thoughts going back a ways to somebody like Dale Murphy not being in the Hall of Fame? I don't know that there's some people say there's a case to be made. I don't really know about that. What are your thoughts on Dale?
That's a really good argument. I think that is one of the true, like it could be yes, it could be no. To me, I think is obviously his biggest detriment is just not playing long enough, but at the same time, back-to-back MVPs, if I'm not mistaken, which I feel like is very rare. I mean, it's rare to win more. It's rare to win one, rare to win two, very rare to win them back-to-back. So he literally was the best player for 2-3 year season. And, is that enough to put you in? Maybe some guys get in simply because they accrue stats over 20 years. I mean, is that right? I don't know. I think they're just stat accumulators. And so but I do love the Hall of Fame in baseball more than any other because they are so much more restrictive. Like I feel like the NBA lets anybody in now. If you average 10 points a game, you're a Hall of Famer. I have strong opinions about sports.
Now the crime dog, Fred McGriff, finally got enshrined in Cooperstown.
Yeah, and I love that guy. I'm happy for him. He
had a
I want to say I was probably 1 or 2 years too young to really appreciate him. But where was he before that? It was he had a career. One in Tampa.
Toronto.
Was it Toronto? Yeah. So, because I want to say he was at the Braves for maybe 5 or 6 years, but he had a lot of seasons somewhere else and put up comparable numbers. So it's well deserved.
He's a 5-time Gold Glover and one of the best hitters of, say, the 1980s at least. But then on those 90s Braves teams, I mean, if they were ever going to win, he was. He was a part of that 99 team.
I think
was he there that long?
I feel like that's a little the 99. No, not he wouldn't have been on that.
Maybe it was 96.
Yeah, because I would have to go back and look. I mean, he did play well into his 30s too. He might even play until his 40s.
What about
his distinctive swing is very that's always a memorable thing. And he actually, I remember there used to be these hitting instructional classes or camps that he would do, and he was in a commercial at least sponsoring them. It was just this classic 90s commercial you'd see, and that sticks out in my mind too about Freddie, or the crime dog, not Freddie, but the crime dog Fred.
He was drafted by the Blue Jays, played with them through the end of the 80s, and then the Padres before coming over to Atlanta.
I didn't even know that, the Padres.
Yeah, just a few years. I just remember the baseball cards. How about
kind of a wasted 2-year stint in San Diego back then?
Yeah. What about, do you have whether it's a Brave or an NBA player, NFL player, how about somebody that you didn't like, maybe you even loathed for a period of time, and then you came around and you're like, you know what? I like this guy, or wow, he's actually cracking the top tier. I wasn't necessarily wrong on him, but I like him now.
Yeah, I definitely could come up with some people. That would be something I'd have to think about for a minute.
What about
it's probably not going to be and he's not by any stretch one of my favorites. And I feel like I'm going in the opposite direction of the general feeling. But I originally did not like Aaron Rodgers, and then I've kind of warmed up to him when everybody has kind of gone sour on him. And I mainly have warmed up to him just because he's not politically correct, and that's okay with me. Too many people are afraid of saying what they feel or believe, and he does not. Whether or not you agree with it, that's not the point I'm making. I just like the fact that he's not afraid to say it. But in terms of on the field, no, he's always been good. I kind of never liked him on the field, especially when he was with the Packers.
Yeah, I think I had Rodgers on my fantasy team for the first time. I don't think it wasn't last year because he was hurt all year, but the year before. Never been personally a fan of Rodgers, but then again, when you're a Joe Flacco fan, it's just not a lot of bandwidth left for another quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, you're all in. This is not about me, but going back to Flacco, it is fun. Whoever your favorite player is, or someone that you closely follow, and they're kind of they're in limbo maybe, or perceived to be toast, or their value has plummeted, and then they make a resurgence. It's a lot of fun watching sports, and I mean, that could be a team also that you get behind. And I mean, Lowell, you've been an Auburn fan for many, many years. You've been through a lot of turmoil with this team, a lot of Saturday afternoons and evenings that I'm sure you would like to have seen played out differently. But you've also been a part of some great experiences on the plains, maybe at the games. And what's it? Because I know that recent history, it's been difficult, but a favorite Auburn memory, whether it's at a game or just a team that you liked a lot?
Yeah, well, it might be the easy button, but obviously the Cam Newton season was incredible. Yeah. I mean, it was memorable, and I almost remember I didn't go to a game live that season, but we all were gathering at various people's houses throughout, and it was just you would see things kind of each week that just kind of amaze you. And I think what was even more amazing about him is nobody knew who the guy was. He just kind of came out of nowhere. He was this kind of transfer from Florida, and he transferred because he got in trouble for some laptop, and I don't even know the story about the laptop. And then but then some of the things you see, and one of the most memorable plays was him 60, 70-yard run against LSU. And, he's outrunning Patrick Peterson, who's probably, maybe not a Hall of Famer, but perennial Pro Bowler in the NFL. And it's just like, this is unbelievable. And I at the time, it was the single greatest season of college football. Of course, now you see some of the numbers that, like, Burrow put up his 1 year, and I think that probably surpassed it. Hell, even Mac Jones, I think, broke records his 1 year. But I will say my favorite player, without doubt, from Auburn was Cadillac. And that 2004 was also incredible. And I think we absolutely got hosed. Should have been in the final against USC. But, that was kind of the BCS era and showed how useless it was.
Wow. Yeah.
But Cadillac, how good of a name is that for a football player? And then the way he ran was just absolutely amazing. And I hated his NFL career got cut short. He was drafted by Gruden in the Bucks, and he had some highlights, but his knees he had spaghetti knees.
Who was that player? There was a tight end, noodle knees, that somebody read.
Pettigrew. It was you somehow one season in fantasy you kept. I feel like you kept, or maybe it's 2 or 3 seasons, you ended up with this guy, and he just always kept getting hurt.
Yep. That's seems to happen more often than not. Speaking of fantasy football, 20 years in, what a run. I mean, it's just, I have not won a championship, and my involvement in the league dates back to the end of 2005. Very embarrassing admission there, but you've racked up 7 championships. We are just over 3 months away from the John Hanna Invitational Fantasy Football League draft. We've got some secret, not so secret recordings of last year's draft that Jim has been pleading with me to release. And I've got to be honest, I haven't even listened to them yet. I'm not sure that I want to, but for those of you listening,
who knows what was said that night.
I might hang on to this and stick that behind some sort of paywall. This is supposed to be a
unfiltered.
Dan Time is. I'm going to great lengths to protect this show. Yeah, but some of the shows I listen to, and I won't name them, but everybody's tired of the ads. You skip through them, you hit the 30-second button, you hit it again, you hit it 6 times. Nobody wants to hear that, so you're not going to hear that on Dan Time as long as I can prevent that from happening. And you won't pay for anything, and you'll get bonus episodes, and you don't have to pay for those or subscribe. Just throw me a 5-star review every once in a while, would you? But anyway, what was I getting at? Yeah, so there's some draft recordings from last year. We'll see. If I can clean them up, I may stick them out there. But just over 3 months away from draft day, when do you start preparing, researching? Are you doing it right now? I know that you have some proprietary spreadsheets. We've seen some of them, many that we have not seen. This is, I mean, I love fantasy sports, particularly football, and you obviously do too, and you're very, very good at it. How soon do you start really locking in?
Yeah, the older we get, obviously, it's been harder. But 10 years ago, it was almost 24/7. Just you're trying to keep up with names and new teams, moves, and whatnot, and kind of stuff I do with my job. It's always in spreadsheets. And so that, to me, that's kind of fun as well. Just even kind of coming up with new ways to graph something or chart something. But the spread, I will, let me clear up I didn't use a spreadsheet in last year's draft. I felt like there were whispers behind my back that maybe that was the reason why I was winning. So I decided to forego it and still ended up winning. Say what you will, maybe it was luck, who knows. Jim will say it's because I picked up Puka off the waiver wire before he did. I mean, that's okay.
I remember Jim being very upset that, was it Travis that scooped up Russell Wilson a couple picks before he had his heart set on him, and then we all saw what happened.
Yeah.
That Broncos experiment.
And it's kind of like you hope everybody forgot about that. Like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I always thought he was going to do bad. It was, but, now it's kind of, and honestly, too, especially back in the 25, 26, 27 years, and I'm not ashamed to admit it now, I used to play Madden back then, and that was always a great way to see, like, actual, a kind of a fairly accurate analysis of a player, because as much as I dislike EA right now, their predatory practices in terms of monetizing games, and I don't play games anymore, but I know I know what's going on, and that's another conversation too. But say what you will about them as a company, they definitely knew how to analyze players, and I don't know, and that's what's amazing about it. I don't know how they do it, maybe they have professional scouters, but that was always to me a kind of an advantage, I think, just having this intimate knowledge of each player almost, because you would play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back before we really had the magazines and stuff. So I guess the magazines almost take the place of the game now.
What do you think about the physical media, like the fantasy football circulars and the magazines? When was the last time you bought one before a draft?
Oh, I love it. To me, that's almost it's a guilty pleasure. It's, I'll go to CVS and the weekend or the, a couple nights before, and, I usually try to get 2 at least, just see differing opinions. But honestly now, and this is the way it is with a lot of things, selection of just various things, it's like shrunk down enormously. So like now there's only, you might find 2 different publications, and honestly, if you probably dug into, you probably find out they're all owned by the same company or something. Like I feel like I don't want to know that information.
Oh yeah. No, you're
But,
right.
and then honestly, you know what to expect when you read these magazines. It's really pretty pictures. Once you dive into it, you're like, yeah, there's not really a whole lot of substance in here. It's just a bunch of numbers that some guy probably has a program that throws it together for him. And then, they act like they're experts. They're not.
But there is that nostalgia factor, and I'm with you. Even
Yes.
if I'm spending the $8.95 or $9.95 for the magazine, and I'm just gonna thumb through it and make my
Yeah.
markings in it that day, that evening. Hey, it's worth it to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fun, and that's part of the fun. And that is the most fun is the draft day. Like that's what makes it all worthwhile. I mean, the camaraderie, the getting together. I absolutely love that Terrence calls in. I think it's, the dedication he showed 1 or 2 years where he actually drove back was very commendable and awesome. But it's just not, it doesn't make sense for him to do it now the older we get. So I love that he's able to call in and still be part of it. And that's, honestly, one of the highlights of my year. And I hope it continues.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I think such a big part of our league is the camaraderie. Like you said, we do the live draft. 80, 90% of the league is there in a room together. How often does that ever happen in your life?
Yeah.
At our
With,
age now and our
yeah.
responsibilities and commitments and
And at least half the members, myself, your brothers and dad included, I mean, for 20 plus years, maybe, or I think I joined in '06, maybe if that's '05 or '06. So a lot of the same quote unquote founding members been doing it for that long. That's really special too. Yeah. Cause I mean, I read comments all the time on Reddit and I read Reddit in my spare time. Not all the time, Twitter, Reddit, whatever.
right.
Uh, I think there's a big issue with just loneliness these days and people not having friends, and that's kind of the opposite of what we got going on with this league, and that's what's awesome about it.
You're absolutely right. This day and age, you can be very connected with people, and I think it's perfectly fine to be exchanging text messages most of the year. But if you're listening to the show and you've got people that you're messaging with about sports or whatever your interests are, try to get, whether it's a fantasy football league or something, plug in one, could be just one event, one get together a year, and it is so worth it. Like I said, you don't have to get together that often, but just looking forward to that
Yes.
event is a big part of it as well. And we shake hands, we give the hugs, and everyone's got whatever BYOB, they got the stuff that they brought and the food that they brought and the laughs, and before you know it, the night's over. But a
Yeah.
lot of it is just being excited about that draft day because, as we've seen, the older you get, the pressures around you in your life, other areas of your life start to mount, and things aren't as loose as they used to be, and it's an opportunity to loosen up. And as we've seen, I'm sure this has happened to other groups of guys, groups of girls. Things happen, and you lose friends, and various reasons, illness or accidents or things like that, and you have to say goodbye to friends. And I think that especially is important to have a bond with a group of people who they've got that thing in common. We were all good friends with that guy, or that girl. Like we respect their memory. We want to preserve their memory, and that I think that helps getting older and going through grief on any kind of level, where you kind of have someone who gets it. They're like, yeah, I miss him too.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a good way to reminisce about memories with those people, and just it's kind of a safe space in general. Just be yourself, and you're not worried about saying something wrong in front of somebody. That's the beauty about it. Just being around people you love and you're comfortable around, and you get to circle the day on the calendar. So it is almost like a second Christmas. And we all joke about, the pre-draft nights, like, everybody's, we're giddy and we're like, and then even the culmination of, after the draft, everybody's like waiting on the commish to enter the players so we can all see our grades.
Yes.
It's almost a weekend event, really. And to me, kind of what makes it better, especially with kind of just expansion talks and everything, like there used to not ever be games on at the same time, but now that we have a game on every weekend now, almost, at least that's what football, the direction it's going. We always get that in the background too now. And to me, that just adds to it. It's like the first weekend of college maybe. And, so there's football everywhere and,
right.
It's just guy stuff.
It is. That's one thing that I got to say I envy about a couple of the guests that I've had on here previously, Dan Straley, Dan Winkler. If you're a professional athlete, what other job, what other profession are you basically hanging out with a group of guys, a large group of guys every day? And of course, you got to deal with the personalities that you don't like, but it's not every day that you get 9 or 10 men into a room together, and the way that we talk, and I don't think we're quite as nasty with the language and the subject matters maybe we were when we were 24, but it's healthy. I think it's very healthy for men to get together and have a little fun and let it hang out a little bit, and you're not in a work setting. You're not trying to be careful not to say something. Your mom's not there. It's a good thing your sister's not there. Your wife's not there.
Yeah, you're not around work people. It's just, a good escape. It's almost a vacation right down the street kind of. And, if you love sports, that's why you do it. So it's just a perfect day.
Well, I agree. It's Christmas for adults. I think Jim said something to that effect, and it's pretty much spot on. August 20-something.
There's always there's a funny scene in that movie Knocked Up where she thinks her husband's having an affair and she tracks him down and, kind of goes into this strange person's house and all the lights are off. But, there's one room where the lights are on and the door's closed and you can hear muffled voices. And so she's, going in there thinking to expect the worst. And it's just a group of guys having a baseball fantasy draft. And I just thought that was hilarious.
A few more questions here, just maybe some Dan time questions, and I think it goes without saying that we'll do a follow-up episode, because with your 7 championships, if we're keeping score on the Dan Time podcast, I mean, Jim's appeared, I think, 3 times, and we've got to get you up there neck and neck as far as appearances.
Yeah, we need to do a Jim and have Jim on and myself on, and we can
at the same time
debate the qualities of our championships. But my year was better than this year, and what was the best team? And I say that jokingly, but I would absolutely probably have a great time doing that.
Well, it's gonna happen now. It never occurred to me to have 2 guests on at the same time, possibly hashing it out. That would be great material for the podcast. Some kind of random questions here. If I offered you one of those Nestle drumstick ice cream cones or an ice cream sandwich, which one are you going for?
Oh, the cone, without doubt.
You know which ones I'm talking about?
I do. In fact, I'll, sometimes buy them myself. And, as a 42-year-old man, I'm not, at the checkout line with, maybe 2 boxes of it, actually. But of course, now it's just, you realize how bad they are for you. But man, I would absolutely demolish those over an ice cream sandwich. I think are highly overrated, to be honest with you.
They are.
And at least the traditional ones.
What about when
you
were
now they have cookies and you can do different flavored ice cream and
What are your thoughts on Mentos? I think I tried them once about 20 years ago, and I was thinking, what is it with these things? There's so many better products, treats that
Yeah.
you could buy? What are your thoughts on Mentos? And if
I feel like it's almost an accident. Like somebody was trying to come up with a mint that was chewy, and it ended up not being a mint. It just ended up being a big Skittle, kind of. To me, the only good thing about those were their commercials back in the '90s.
I
I don't
vaguely
know
remember.
anybody that seeks a Mentos. Like, man, I gotta go get a pack of these.
It feels like they're holding something back on the flavor. It's like, man, what just pack the punch? I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of gum and it's not. Yeah, it's really just a glob of lightly flavored sugar.
How do you feel when you're walking down a downtown street? Maybe you don't realize it, but you just walk past a cigar bar, and you, or anytime you catch the cigar smoke hanging in the air. Maybe you're at somebody's backyard and somebody lit one up. What are your thoughts on cigar smoke? Or do you ever partake? Do you enjoy a cigar?
It's such a rare occasion. It's an interesting question. The smell of it does not bother me. I am always intrigued by, like, there was a very, very brief time you try to pick up, like, hey, I'm gonna become a connoisseur. I'm gonna look into this and try to see what the whole craze is about it. And then you start looking at it, and it's like there's a million different types. You don't even know where to begin, like what's good, what's not. And that's kind of the level that I just stop and say, okay, I'll just never going to do this. If somebody gives it to me, sure, no problem, I'll do it. But that's as far as I'll take it.
I've tried to enjoy a cigar, and it's just not for me. The smoke at a reasonable distance doesn't really bother me. I think a big part of the cigar hobby is the statement of holding a cigar, smoking one. It's a symbol of freedom and expression, and I respect all of that. Just for me, I don't
I feel like if you're smoking one, you need to be wearing penny loafers without socks. That's kind of what I consider a attire for smoking a cigar in public. And maybe that's just what I see, but usually they go hand in hand.
Or you own a business, or you have owned a business. I've probably seen a female smoking a cigar, but I've never seen just a woman our age just relaxing and smoking a cigar for 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, we're getting way off track here, but I'm taking us there. All right. Hopefully you have a pretty good pest control service, but in the event that you see an insect, a non-flying insect, in your house, Lowell, are you the type of person who's going to get that little rascal in a dustpan and help him out the door, or are you going in for the kill?
Yeah, yeah, I feel like that's probably like some psych question to judge if you're a serial killer or not. But I typically just for to set the example, just so others see this is what happens when you come in here. I typically go in for the kill. I mean, if it's one of these like little June bugs, okay, I might take it out. But a roach, a spider, you're done. If I get to you, you're done.
Just a bad place to be for that little guy.
Yeah, and there is a part of me that man, I wish that didn't have to do this. And this roach, woke up today just looking for food. But again, I don't think these have brains, and I don't think their level of thought is that extensive. So I don't feel that bad about it.
I remember, you might remember this apartment that I had in Birmingham off Idlewild Circle.
I do.
2000 maybe time period. So I was working nights, and I would come home and routinely flip on the lights in the kitchen and see a number of roaches scatter. And at that age, whatever your priorities are and your social life and stuff, you just don't take the time to call the landlord and say, "Hey, could you get someone out here to spray?" I don't think I ever once made that call, which is
Yeah.
bizarre. Probably because I didn't
And I
see
don't
him.
think they would have come out to do it either.
But there were quite a number of them, not dozens and anything like that, but always about 5 or 6 or 7. And I would have to go through this routine of washing them down the drain. Like I would send many of them to a watery grave, and
Oh man, yeah.
kind of feel
Like
a little bad about
yeah,
it. But
that's almost like toying with them or torturing them. Of course, for all you know, they were just getting, dumped right back out through some hole in the pipe right outside your back door. And those, you just kept flushing down the same 5 roaches every time.
okay, one final question here: if you could put on a cape and fly, much like a superhero, or jump on a magic carpet and fly on,
The gypsy or a
yeah,
genie.
a genie, yeah. If you could take flight with a superhero cape or on a magic carpet, what would you go for?
Oh, wow. That's, I
The,
think just the coolness factor with a cape, but there's something to be said about just being able to sit down while you're traveling and, you could have a, cup of tea next to you or whatever. I say cup of tea because I feel like that's what a genie would drink, but, a scotch
the,
probably.
there's the presumption with the carpet that you're not going to fall off, but you're not really tethered to anything. You're just sitting.
Yeah.
But with the cape, it's kind of like, well, I'm flying with this. This is how I can fly, and this thing's not just going to like rip off.
Yeah. But I mean, if we're going to really dig into this, you could say the carpet's like actually a vehicle though, and it's doing the flying. I mean, how on earth would the cape, be performing that same task? It's really just an accessory, but I would definitely choose that over, some silly little carpet out of a cartoon.
Well, I think that's about it for today. I think maybe, well, we definitely have to commit to another episode and the debate between you and Jim.
Absolutely. And I will be up for that. I would like to also schedule something, and I want to explain how soccer works to all of my friends as well and try to get them on board.
Lowell, I on my list here, and my gosh, if I didn't have to ask about cigars and roaches and flying carpets, I had Premier League on here, and
Oh man.
it's kind of like when a band gets up there and they play like 4 songs from the album that nobody cares about, and they're like, "Well, why didn't you play?"
Well, no, hey, that's just another opportunity to talk about later. But just a quick blurb about it's the bet to me. It's one of the best leagues in the world and just entertainment value. And absolutely, it's must see TV for me, and I don't miss it. And Tottenham is the team I pull for, and they suck and they never win trophies, but that's okay.
Yeah, I appreciate your appreciation of the Premier League. Can't say that I'll become a fan, but can't say that I won't ever.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to plug before we check the box here on the first Lowell Shepura episode?
No, not really. Just get out and vote.
There you go. We are 6 months away.
Absolutely. The reason I say that, I just saw the turnout for the London election, and I want to say that it was a paltry 20-something% turnout. And it's just, get out there and vote, people. Just, it's a privilege. If you travel the world, I think you get a better appreciation for it.
Well, you heard the man, and get yourself registered. Tune in. Don't say that, well, my vote doesn't count. It does. And hey, listen, and this show, I don't get political on here. I don't endorse anything, but sometimes people forget that right there in your county, you go out and just go vote in that primary and vote in that race for school board or tax assessor, and you never know. Some of those races come down to like 8 votes. You get in.
I think they're important.
And you can also, people very close to me have said, well, it's not going to change anything, I don't like those candidates. Well, remember, when you go to vote, you can leave certain races blank. You can do that. You can vote for one thing and nothing else. You can vote for all of it except one and do that. But anyway, good advice there from Lowell. And I appreciate you making time in your day. This is a big deal for me, for us to connect. We covered some of the stuff that I had always dreamed of covering, for you being a guest on the show, and something still on the table. That's okay. All right, folks. Well,
thanks for having me, Dan.
Thank you, Lowell, and you guys
had a great time. Yeah,
and we'll do it again soon. We'll get you back in short order. All right.
Would love it.
Have a great week, folks, and we'll see you next Sunday on the Dan Time Podcast. Thanks, Lowell.
Thanks, Dan.